Actually, have
All
I
right.
had my dog do any tricks for this call before?
Yeah, I think so. Well, I don't know. I've been on a lot of calls with you, but I have seen your dog.
Hey, bud, come on up here. Come here. Good. All right. This is a good icebreaker to get us started, right?
Yeah. So let's get started. It's
Yeah. Can I get a
a little
paw?
after 1.
Good. Other paw. Good.
Aw.
Good job. You get a treat too, Tom.
I don't want those.
So let's get started. Thanks everybody for joining us. This is our weekly call now, and I don't know, it's our 4th or 5th call. But today we have 3 good speakers. Janine and I are happy to actually encourage anybody to contact us with ideas for other topics. But today we're going to talk about what Tom's talked about every week, and that is the SBA programs and other programs that might be available for businesses. Then Angela is going to talk a little bit more about sole proprietorships. And Rania Green is from Niagara University is going to talk about mental health and how we're all probably starting to be affected by being home and the novelty's wearing off. And I think we're going to start hearing more and more dismal news about perhaps how long this is going to last, and also the impact it's having on businesses around the country, or around the world, frankly. So with that, Tom, if you can share if you need to, share your screen and take it away with more dog tricks.
He's got lots of tricks. I don't know if he's going to roll over for us or not. But hi again, everyone. I think we got a couple new faces on here. I'm Tom Murdoch. I'm with the University at Buffalo in our economic development group, which we call business and entrepreneur partnerships, where we work with small companies, established companies in finding ways to help them grow in Western New York, oftentimes by tying them to UB and the facilities or whatever programs are available. In the last month, I've developed a bit of, I don't know if you want to call it expertise, in terms of the programs that have been rolling out of the federal government, specifically the Paycheck Protection Program, sometimes known as PPP, and the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, which is called EIDL. And what I wanted to do is just share a super quick overview, since I know some people have already heard this, and then share what's new in the past week. And then I've got a couple of other things that are kind of new and exciting that, or at least new to this group and relevant to what's going on right now that I think may help. So basically the federal government has rolled out what they call the CARES Act, which is this big $2+ trillion stimulus to help small businesses recover from what's going on, and frankly to help them survive what's going on. The signature one is called the Paycheck Protection Program, which involves calculating your monthly payroll, and you can essentially get a loan for 2.5 times your monthly payroll, which becomes forgivable if you use 75% of it for payroll costs. And if you don't do that, if you end up laying people off, then you owe that money back in 2 years at 1%. And so it's not unattractive money either way. You do that through your bank, so you apply directly to your bank. And the big thing to know here is that the banks are getting just astronomical volume in terms of applications, and they are doing everything they can to keep up. If you think about a bank as small as Evans Bank, they got more than 800 applications in the past week alone. And so their loan group was, I think, like 5 people, and they've expanded it to 30 people. And so banks everywhere are doing everything they can to divert staff into their loan groups to help them process these Paycheck Protection Program loans. Then the other one is called EIDL, Economic Injury Disaster Loan. And the kind of the interesting hook there, it's structured as a loan, but the way it was first rolled out, they said the first $10,000 would be forgivable. And so That first $10,000 was essentially a grant, and I have a sneeze coming here. Give me 1 second. So EIDL, the other part of the way that, maybe my sneeze is going away. The other way that, the other thing that's important to note about EIDL and the way that that was rolled out is they said, just get your information in. You apply not through your bank, but through the SBA, directly on the Small Business Administration's website. And that $10,000 grant would be dispersed within 72 hours. And the 72 hours thing has not been happening. And so it is, instead what is happening is companies are now getting letters, having applied, I don't know, a week and a half ago, saying, again, the volume is astronomical here, and we're doing everything we can to keep up with this, but it's not going to be 3 days. And further, it may not be $10,000 because we're trying to serve the most number of companies in the fairest way possible. And realistically, what it is going to look like when the money does come is that you're probably going to get $1,000 for each one of the employees that you have, up to 10 employees. So instead of a $10,000 grant advance in 72 hours, what you're getting is $1,000 for every employee that you had as of January 31st. And they'll be in touch once they do that to see if you want to take more money as a loan. If you do take more money as a loan, it's at 3.75%. If you're a business, 2.75%. If you're a nonprofit, and that is paid back over a long period of time. I want to say 30 years. And so it's not this incredible $10,000 grant that it was initially announced to be, but there is essentially some free money in there. I've worked with dozens and dozens of companies in the last 4 weeks figuring these programs out, and I don't have one yet that has received a check from either program. I'm going to share my screen really quickly to show you folks something. So I think what you're looking at, does everyone see the Buffalo News here?
Not yet.
No, not yet.
Oh,
There you go.
okay. Glad I asked. So this is an article that was in the Buffalo News yesterday. Programs to help small businesses still rife with snafus. So there's a lot that's getting figured out, and this is kind of it. Small businesses say they're unsure of how the programs work, afraid they didn't submit the right information or documentation, uncertain if it uploaded properly, and frustrated that they can't talk to anyone about it. And so that's kind of it. That's the situation right now. When we did the first one of these calls a couple of weeks ago, we said that so much money was being made available, sounded like it was too good to be true, and probably meant the situation out there is really drastic, and both are proving out to be true. So unfortunately, we've got some delays in seeing all of this come to fruition. The other thing that I wanted to share that I think has been helpful is a comparison document, and this is on the SBA's website. And so this is straight from the horse's mouth, and this shows the Paycheck Protection Program. Here, can you guys see my mouse when I'm doing this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you got the Paycheck Protection Program, you've got the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, you have the advanced portion of the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, and then some other programs. The SBA programs are, the other ones that I haven't gone into detail on are largely for companies that already have SBA loans. So I haven't gone into a whole lot of detail on those because it's really for a subset of the audience. But this is showing in a pretty clear and convincing fashion how these programs work and how they compare to one another. This is available, and as I said, this is straight from the horse's mouth, the Small Business Administration. And I just want to show everyone how you can surf directly to this. And so if you start americassbdc.org and you go to resources for small business, small business resources for coronavirus, sorry. And you scroll down a bit. It is the second thing on here. So this SBA coronavirus pandemic loans. Sorry, the way that I'm projecting my screen here is covered by the grid of our pictures, so I can't see everything here. And then it's this link here. So the SBA coronavirus pandemic loans comparison guide. So that'll get you directly to it. So SBA website, coronavirus resources, and then the loan comparison guide. So that is the most official thing that is out there, and it's done in a way that is pretty pithy and gets right to the point. So that's a good resource. The other thing that I wanted to share, because I know these programs were put together to move really quickly, and they're not moving at the speed that we need them to. It's easy for me to say, talk to the SBDC, right? And realistically, they are the biggest resource that's out there. But the SBDCs I know are getting calls by the hundreds every single day. And the other part of it is no one really wants advice to say, go to this website and enter your email address and they'll be in touch when they get to you. And that's not really of interest to anyone. And so what I wanted to share is something else here. And this is called openofficetime.com. And this is put together by a guy who's an entrepreneur in Western New York and just wanted to help entrepreneurs connect with resources that were available to them. And so there's a large number, several dozen people, whether they're attorneys or accountants or people like me who make their time available through a Calendly webpage where you just say, these are times that I'm available and someone can book time with me. And so they're all listed on here. And as you can see, there are several dozen people here with a lot of different backgrounds. I've done a lot of scrolling and I'm only at the K's right now. So the list goes on and on. And these are people that they're available to you free of charge, and you can surf through the site and see who specifically is out there and what you think they can help you with. So that's a quick bit of content from me, just kind of an update on where we are with the SBA programs, which unfortunately there's more uncertainty and more delays, but then an additional resource too. The model that we've had the last couple weeks on these calls has been that we'll tend to hold questions till the end. But if that works for everyone, then I will pass it on to, or I'll pass it back to Pat, I should say.
Okay, thanks, Tom. Yeah, well, I'm sure we'll have questions after the next two speakers. And next up is Angela. She's going to talk about kind of the same thing, only with the angle of looking at it from the perspective of a sole proprietorship. I know there's a couple of them on the line. So take it away, Angela.
Thanks, Pat. So to introduce myself quickly, I am a CPA. My name's Angela Nowicki. I own my own practice in the Buffalo area, focusing on small businesses and individuals. Small businesses being all sizes, from someone who just started up their sole proprietorship within the past couple of months or thinking about starting a business, to a full-fledged company with 20 plus employees. So I have really been digging into these SBA programs, and I second everything that Tom says. These are interesting times. The government is trying to send this money out into the economy as quickly as possible. And so up on April 3rd, most banks weren't even ready. And that was the application opening for larger businesses, so actual corporations, partnerships, pretty much any business with an employer identification number. And then come around to April 10th is when those applications opened up to sole proprietors, anyone who runs their business under their social security number. Many banks had to wait until this Monday to open up those applications. And even now, banks like M&T stopped accepting applications for the Paycheck Protection Program, even for their existing customers. So I've been working day in and day out with a lot of my clients, some of which who were planning on applying today, and they just can't find a bank. So I am able to have a couple of resources. I found one bank that is accepting applications from new customers. That's Evans Bank, and they told me, to be honest, they expect their funds to run out by the end of the day today. So if you haven't applied, certainly contact your banker. Hopefully the applications are still open. Anyone who has a business, as long as it was in operation starting February 15th of this year, you qualify for this loan. And just like Tom said, this loan can be forgiven. So it would be considered tax-free income to you upon the forgiveness process. So I am just going to share my screen real quick. I have a quick deck, and I just want to share a couple slides. And again, it's just said, this one is Go Vital and the Paycheck Protection Program. The one that I'm focusing on right now is PPP on the right here. Anytime that it talks about payroll expenses, employees, sole proprietors with no employees,
Did Angela freeze for everyone?
Yeah,
Yes, I'm not hearing anything.
let's switch to Rania, are you ready to talk about mental health? And we'll go back to Angela if we can. We lost her completely.
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. This is my first Zoom meeting, so my office isn't set up. I have windows and there's a lot of glare, so I'm not able to use the camera. But good afternoon. Thank you for inviting me to take part in the small business group discussion for today. My name is Rania Green, and I was asked to talk a little bit about mental wellness, the impact of COVID-19 pandemic on our wellness, and local community resources to address needs. So obviously there's no question our world is changing rapidly at the moment. This is definitely a time of uncertainty, and people report, or I'm sure yourselves and your family and people, your peers that you work with, are feeling anxious and worried about what's going on. Just to stress, this is a normal response given some of the news coverage. It would be hard not to worry about what all of this means for yourself, for those you love, as well as your businesses. With the current health situation, many of our normal routines and daily activities are changing. While we're all pretty aware of the physical impact or symptoms of COVID-19, I think it's important to talk about the possible mental health effects of COVID-19 that are just as important to address, especially given 1 in 5 people already have mental health conditions, and 1 in 2 are at risk of being significantly impacted by this pandemic. This demonstrates the need for us to be aware of the possible impact and also how to foster wellness and address mental health needs. Right now, as we listen to the news, we hear a lot about how we're currently seeing an increase in reported symptoms of anxiety, depression, domestic violence, and also drug overdoses. There's a general sense of distress and also a lot of grief and loss, which I think we don't really naturally identify with. It looks like the loss of financial security, the threat or loss of your home, death of loved ones, emotional distance in relationships due to increased physical distancing, also a loss of independence or how we're able to spend our time, how we move around in the world, and overall, all of us kind of question our own mortality. This is all very stressful for anyone. We're not alone in this, and we're all going through this together. But I think one of the most important things is to monitor our stress levels, and because stress can affect how you think, your emotions, your body, and your behavior. And sometimes we're not aware when we're impacted by stress because it can become our norm and we don't always check in with ourselves. So it's just being mindful how stress can show up with our thinking. It can show up as being easily distracted, trouble with concentration, trouble remembering. As far as our emotions, it can impact us by causing trouble relaxing, feeling irritable, feeling down, also feeling anxious. With our body, we can have increase or decrease of energy. There can be body tension, feeling restless, sweating, also being startled more, having headaches, changes in our appetite as well as our sleep. And behaviorally, it can show up by wanting to be alone. A lot of times, people will tend to isolate a little bit more and kind of turn inward. Difficulty completing tasks, blaming others, or getting into arguments. So again, it's important to be aware when some of these things are going on so that we can do something about them earlier rather than later when we're significantly impacted. It can be unsettling because we can find that the things that we used to do to look after our well-being have become difficult, or maybe we're not able to do them. Some people used to go to the gym and the gyms are closed. So part of this is being creative and looking for new ways to kind of manage our stress and mental wellness. Whether we're working from home or in some form of physical isolation or distancing, it can be helpful to organize a daily routine that involves a balance between activities that give you a sense of achievement, also activities that help you feel close and connected with others, because we keep hearing the word social distancing, and we're very social creatures or social beings, and instead of calling it social distancing, it's more of a physical distancing. We really do need to try to remain connected to those that we love and care about. And reach out to others that may be living alone and not have others in their households. And also a balance with activities of things that you find pleasurable. And again, we might not be able to do all the things that we used to do, but it's being creative and finding new things that we enjoy. Especially with working from home, it's important to kind of try to stick to a routine. Maybe you get up and you start your day, you eat breakfast, you get showered, you get dressed, and then you start your to-do list. Establishing boundaries if possible. So maybe trying to keep your workspace separate from where you eat or where you sleep or other areas of your home. Taking frequent breaks is important too, to refresh our mind. It's going to be very distracting at times to work from home. Even if you can get a hot beverage and walk away for a little bit and then come back and be refreshed. I think we live in a society where productivity is strongly stressed, and at this point in time, due to the impact of the pandemic and increased stress in our lives, it's going to be that much more important to take breaks and allow for some downtime, that we don't need to be productive 24/7. Setting small goals that are realistic on what you can achieve, and not beating yourself up or feeling overly disappointed if you don't get everything done at that moment. And also connecting with your other coworkers or peers, reaching out to others to talk about what's going on or what difficulties you may be experiencing. Again, realizing that everyone reacts differently to stressful situations, but there are some practical steps based on a significant body of research that you can take to improve your overall well-being and reduce stress reactions related to the COVID-19 outbreak. You don't have to do all of them, but incorporating them, some of the strategies might help maintain overall well-being. One of them, which we talked about earlier, is staying connected with others. I can't reinforce how important this is, especially since access to places where we used to go, like the schools or workplaces or places of worship, or even spending time with family and friends. That's been taken away due to us needing to separate for a little while to get this under control. So again, being creative about how you maintain connections with others, reaching out by phone, using video chats, calling people on the phone, maybe sending cards or mail, but encouraging you to do that. There are other ways to kind of manage the strong emotions that are going on with this pandemic. It's realizing that it's understandable to feel anxious and worried. It's okay to not be okay some days. It's going to fluctuate. Maybe one day we'll have a good day. The next day, maybe we're struggling a little bit more. Making time to unwind and remind yourself that these strong feelings are tolerable and that they will fade, instead of trying to suppress emotions. If you find that you're getting stressed, this is another big point, by watching the news, reduce your exposure to it, especially prior to trying to go to sleep. It's okay to have limits. We don't have to watch the news every day or look at the numbers climbing. It might be different for every person, but watch how you feel about that. Maybe you need to distance yourself from that a little bit. And I think all of us can relate to having people in our lives that when you call or talk with them, that's all that they kind of want to talk about, because we're being bombarded by this. But it's okay to try, say like, this is difficult and can we talk about something else, because it can amp up our stress and anxiety. Pacing ourselves between stressful activities and remembering to do something fun after a hard or difficult task, trying to find time to relax your body and mind. So again, finding quiet time. Sometimes people use meditation or yoga or exercise or stretching, walking, listening to music or reading for pleasure. Those are all examples. It's important to find something that resonates with you, because what works for me might not work for you. So it's finding what works for you. Also trying to maintain a sense of hope. One of the things that research has found to be very beneficial is the use of gratitude, because sometimes going through something like this with so much uncertainty and so much fear, we can lose focus of the good things that are going on in our life. So something as simple as writing down 3 things that we're grateful for every day or every other day can be helpful, and it can kind of change our focus instead of looking at the negative and ruminating about that. And it's also something that you can go back to. So if you're struggling one day, you can grab your book and look and see that despite everything that's going on, there's still some good. And again, engaging in pleasant activities, which is going to be different from person to person. And again, we may have to start getting creative, since the things we used to do, we may not be able to do. One of the other things that's important is maintaining self-care, eating healthy foods as much as possible, getting exercise. Again, being mindful of things that are within your control and not within your control. Maybe we have to change or modify what our definition of a good day is. Again, setting appropriate goals, accepting emotions that come up for you, maintaining daily routines and schedules as much as possible, and shifting negative self-statements to statements that allow you to function with less distress. So one example would be, this is a terrible time. And we can reframe that as, this is a terrible time, but I can get through this. Also important is remembering to get enough sleep. It can be difficult at times, especially when we're stressed and anxious. So maybe having a bedtime routine, maybe doing something relaxing before you go to bed, maybe not watching the news before you go to bed. Trying to keep a schedule, so as much as possible, trying to go to sleep and get up at the same time each morning. Trying to sleep when you're tired. When we're homebound, there's a tendency to nap or to sit around, and then that can disrupt our whole sleep schedule. So trying not to take naps during the day. Trying to get outside, fresh air can kind of help with that. Trying to avoid caffeine, which can impact your sleep, and also alcohol that is consumed at least 4 to 6 hours before bedtime, so it doesn't impact your sleep. The other thing is, again, regular exercise, being out in nature. Those are other things that can be really helpful. Despite doing all of these things, we still can experience some challenges with getting through our day or maybe interacting with others in our house. And again, this is growing old for people really fast. So part of it is, again, reframing what's within our control. And as things unfold in the coming days and weeks, again, because we don't know how long this is going to last, it's recognizing that this isn't linear. We can have a good day and then a not so good day. So keep in mind, again, that it's okay to not be okay, or to need or seek the support of others. I think the important thing in all of this is to have compassion and patience for yourself and also for others. We're all human. But seeking help is another step towards getting and staying well, but it can be hard to know how to start that process or where to turn to. It's also common to feel unsure or to wonder whether you should try to handle things on your own. But what I would like to say is it's always okay to ask for help, even if you're not sure if you're experiencing a significant or specific mental health concern. We always frame asking for help as a sign of strength, and also to be mindful that there's nothing too small or too big to bring to the table. So we encourage people to, you can reach out to your primary care physician. A lot of times they can offer referrals or suggestions, or maybe that might be all that you need. There's also a lot of trained therapists in the area, nurse practitioners or mental health clinics. There's hotline numbers that can be utilized, online resources or support groups. Just to be mindful, I don't have anything that I can put on the screen, but perhaps I can send Pat the sheet that has a lot of these numbers on it that he can give out to all of you. But locally in Niagara County, there are 3 mental health clinics. One is the Niagara County Department of Mental Health Adult Clinic. They have a location in Niagara Falls and Lockport. And the unique thing about them is that they offer mental health and substance abuse treatment. They also have walk-in hours. A lot of the agencies and service providers that provide counseling have switched to a telehealth platform. So for most of them, you may not be able to physically go to the building, but they can obtain information over the phone and link you with a counselor if need be. So it would just be a matter of calling their intake department, discussing insurance, whether or not they accept your insurance. So Niagara County Department of Mental Health is one, and their phone number is 278-1940. The other is the Niagara Wellness Connection Center through Niagara Falls Memorial Medical Center. They're located, I think they moved. I don't know if it's the 4th or 6th floor of the hospital, but their number is 278-4541. And they also have walk-in hours daily. And all of these clinics are accepting new patients. Horizon Health has 20 locations across Western New York. Their intake number is 831-1800. If someone's looking more for a private practitioner, say a counselor, another good resource, which is a searchable database, would be Psychology Today. If you have access to a computer, you would just type that in. You can type your area code, and a lot of the private practitioners in the area will come up along with bios letting you know what they specialize in and what insurances they take. And so you could also utilize that. The other thing that I wanted to give is the resource for the domestic violence hotline, since we are seeing an increase in domestic violence with people being in close quarters and home. So the New York State Domestic and Sexual Violence Hotline, which is a 24-hour hotlines number, is 1-800-942-6906. And also locally, the YWCA, which can be reached at 433-6999. Also to be in mind with the increase in isolation and people feeling alone at times, sometimes people, and especially if people are highly anxious or experiencing depressive symptoms, suicidal thoughts can come up for people. So wanted to make sure that everyone has the Niagara County Crisis Services 24-hour hotline number, which is 285-3515, as well as the suicide prevention hotline nationally, which is 1-800-273-8255.
Thanks, Brenda.
You're welcome.
Angela, we ready to get back?
Yes, sorry
Give it
about
our
that.
try. That's okay.
So I'm not going to share my screen this time, but I did send Pat all of my slides if anyone wants a copy, or my email address was on the first slide from the meeting today. So I just wanted to quickly finish up with the Paycheck Protection Program. So the first step of the program is to apply through your bank. You have to tell them what your payroll costs are. And again, for self-employed sole proprietors, that would include any employees that you do have, plus the earnings of the business itself up to $100,000. That would count as the owner's pay. Once you apply, the banks, the timing has been varying based on banks when you apply, but I would give it anywhere around a week. They would reach out to you with a loan document. I'm seeing some clients receive the loan documents and the funds as of yesterday, again, depending on their bank and when they applied. As soon as you receive the money, you have 8 weeks to spend those funds on qualifying expenses, at least 75% of which has to be on payroll. For self-employed people, that includes paying yourself. Now, this was all rushed with how fast the government wanted to try to get this money out. And the SBA and Treasury have until April 24th to explain how this forgiveness works for self-employed people. There was no definition on it. And unfortunately, we're not in a situation where we can wait at the moment until those rules come out before applying. So again, the first step is applying. The second step is spending this on forgiveness, and then you have to apply for forgiveness from your bank, and then they'll determine that your loan is forgiven at a tax-free benefit for you. So in a nutshell, that's Paycheck Protection Program. Again, please reach out to me as soon as possible if you have any questions. I would love to answer any questions, again, free of charge. I just really want to help small businesses get through this process. And Tom also mentioned the EIDL program that you apply directly through the SBA. So guidance came out 2 days ago that they are limiting this grant that they touted as up to $10,000. It is $1,000 per employee up to $10,000. However, if you have no employees, self-employed people are getting $1,000 deposited into their account. So you go through the application process. It asks you some details about you, your business, your revenue, cost of goods sold for the past 12 months, and how many employees you have. If you put in 0, I've had a few clients, again, who received that $1,000 just for themselves as being self-employed. And that is a grant. You do not have to pay it back. And then within 3 to 4 weeks, the SBA will reach out to you with a dollar value of a loan that they're going to offer you. It'll be based on your credit score and the amount of revenue that your company made over the past 12 months. If you decline that loan and tell the SBA, thank you, but no thanks, you don't have to repay that grant that you initially received. So it's a grant either way, whether or not you take that subsequent loan. So those are the 2 main SBA programs. Another couple of items that could help self-employed out is unemployment. So self-employed individuals do qualify for unemployment, specifically the pandemic unemployment assistance. So if that's something you're interested in, and again, you would only qualify for unemployment or these loan programs, because when you're saying unemployment, you're not doing work, you're not doing anything for your business, including applying for loans, making payments. I'm not an unemployment expert, but I've been telling clients it's one or the other. So take a look at that if you are in the unfortunate circumstance where you're just not able to go anywhere with your business at the moment. Again, I'm available for questions, so please reach out to me. Thank you.
Thanks, Angela. And I want to open it up for questions for a little bit, and I'll start because I don't know if Tom or Angela can answer this, but what if we have employees that we have to lay off? Can we give them help about what they're supposed to do to collect unemployment? What process they should follow so they get the benefit, the federal benefit as well as the state benefit?
So as an employer, you have a couple of options. If you want to continue paying these employees, you could continue paying them under the Paycheck Protection Loan, assuming you receive a loan, and that would count towards your forgiveness. If you don't apply for Paycheck Protection, there is a tax credit. If you maintain your staff, you can get a tax credit of 50% of what you pay them, up to $10,000, if you continue to pay them while you're forced to close. And if you are an essential business and you have your employees, but they're not able to work for some reason, you would have to pay them either 100% of their wages or 2/3 of their wages, depending on their situation under FMLA. And that is 100% tax credit refundable to the employer if they have to pay any of their employees under this program. If none of those situations apply to you, I would recommend for your employees to apply for unemployment, especially with the $600 a week extra that's being added on.
And let's say I've got a hair salon and I've got 4 people that work in that hair salon that are my employees. It's kind of silly to bring them back and pay them because they can't do anything. They can't open the hair salon. If I take the money, is that forgivable?
Before you answer that, is anyone else enjoying thinking about Pat running a hair salon?
So in that situation, your employees probably will be better off on unemployment. That's horrible to say, but in these times with the additional benefits that are being offered at unemployment, that's most likely the most beneficial route for your employees. And I would work with them. If for some reason it makes more sense for you to pay them, and as an employer, you're okay to do that. It's really up to each employer and their employee situation, but unemployment's most likely the first way to go.
Thank you.
When I heard these loans too are to prevent unemployment, so you said, it is one or the other when people apply for these as like sole prop DBAs too as well, right?
Right. So to answer the second part of your question, Pat, going back to that. So if you do get this loan under Paycheck Protection Program with the intent of paying your people, and it turns out that it's more beneficial for them to be on unemployment, you can still pay yourself as a business owner. That would be a qualifying expense. So you would get forgiveness for that portion. But again, there's considerations that go into this about your decreased headcount, and there's other prorations. So to the extent you're decreasing your headcount, your forgiveness is less. So keep that in mind. But worst case scenario, it's a 1% interest rate loan over 2 years, 6 months of which is deferred payments. Right. And you can prepay or you can pay the loan back early without any penalty.
Thanks. Tom, I think it's a good time to open a hair salon. When this is over, there's going to be a mad rush.
There is. There certainly will be.
Opportunity.
Pat's Mad Rush Hair Salon.
We're going to be open for 1 month.
No repeat business whatsoever.
Go buy some Flobies and call it a day.
Okay. Who else got a question?
Moving on.
Or anything to add?
This is Roscoe, by the way. So if folks want copies of these videos or the recordings or any of the presentations or anything that any of the speakers would like to submit, please drop your email address in the chat. We don't spam, so you will get a OneDrive folder with all of the previous meetings and the chat sessions in there, and then we'll let you know about topics for upcoming meetings. And if you have any questions or suggestions for topics, feel free to email Pat, myself, or Janine, and we'll work on them for future meetings.
Okay, if anyone else has any questions, though, you are all on mute. So I thought I saw somebody talking, and make sure you unmute to ask your question.
Hi, this is Jim Ingham from St. Peter's Church. For the PPP loan, if you work 30 hours, you're a full-time employee. Is there a definition of how to calculate the FTEs for somebody that is part-time?
They're still working on pulling together those regulations. Again, they have until the 24th to release them, so I would give them another 9 days for the release of the specifics. But in my mind, if I were to do it right now, it would be based on the amount of hours. So for anyone who works, say you have 2 people that work 20 hours, that would be considered 1 full-time equivalent.
Thank you. I did see an old definition from the SBA that said that you take the number of part-time people and divide their hours by 120 to calculate the FTEs, but that was from, I think, 2014, and it didn't relate specifically to this program.
And what we're seeing, the rules are literally changing every day. There are some parts of the CARES Act itself that was released on March 24th that the SBA released subsequent guidance that directly contradicts what happened in the CARES Act. So what we know today could change with further SBA guidance. So I try to be careful. And again, I don't want to wait until all the guidance is released, because then it'll be too late. So we're going to do the best that we can in the moment.
Thank you. A couple of other questions on unemployment, if I can just toss them out there.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as a 501c3 organization, we are self-insured for the unemployment. So any benefits that ultimately get paid through New York State are reimbursable by us to the state. Is the $600 additional benefit that is offered by the federal government also going to have to be repaid?
I don't know if anyone else knows that answer. I don't know that answer at the moment.
Okay, then I'll skip to the next question. Not a problem. I'm not clear on that. We have a school, so we have an educational institution, and we have some employees that the teachers are still employed, but we have aides and a few other people who are laid off. Their normal work year is September through June. So it would seem to me that, and I thought I saw something on New York State that said that if you work for an educational institution, if you had time off that was seasonal or vacation or whatever, but there was a reasonable expectation that you were going to be rehired once it was over, you weren't eligible for unemployment. We would certainly like the employees that were laid off to be eligible for unemployment through June, but not through the summer. Is that possible? How do we communicate that to New York State?
I know that when employees file for unemployment, the employer does receive a notification, and they receive a notification for every period that the employee reports for, so typically on a weekly basis. And there's a section in that notification where you can dispute it. So if you see that someone's applying for unemployment in a period which you would not otherwise expect there to be, there's contact information that you can go ahead and dispute the claim. Again, I'm not an unemployment expert, but I would follow up with any contact information from there.
Would that tie into the fact that they're not unemployed at a time when they're not expected to be working? So it seems to me that that would be a pause. They're not unemployed from anything if they have a seasonal position, right? If there is a beginning and end every year.
Right. I would expect those rules to remain consistent.
Okay.
If, again, it's a question that maybe we'll have to answer later, but if a school employee like in the VA does have a reasonable expectation of coming back in September and their unemployment would otherwise end in June, does their $600 per week benefit then also end from the federal government?
So I know that the PUA benefit, the $600, it's a lot more lenient than traditional unemployment. So in there, it included people who quit their job for purposes of not feeling safe with COVID-19. They would qualify for the $600. So I'm not sure if that would be more lenient on seasonal employees as well. I wouldn't be surprised if they would still be eligible though.
And the unemployment is available for both part-time and full-time employees based on the information that's submitted. Is that correct?
Yes, and independent contractors and self-employed.
So if we have employees that previously were part-time and they're still working, but they've cut their hours in half because they're working remotely, they can still apply for unemployment for the balance of the time that they aren't working and expect to get the full $600 each week as well?
So they can apply, but there's a formula that unemployment calculates. I'm not extremely familiar with the details of the formula, but if they make more than a certain amount each week on their part-time benefits, then their ability to claim unemployment also decreases. So it's basically saying you can't get paid more than you would have otherwise been paid. So what I would recommend for them to do is apply. And then when you get the notification as an employer, if things aren't looking right to you, then certainly dispute the claim or contact New York just to make sure that everyone's on the same page.
And that would be just for the basic New York benefit, because likely if they, it's quite likely person on unemployment, including the $600, could be making more than they did when they were working.
Right.
Right. And again, I'm not sure if that's going to go back to the employer.
Okay.
Any idea when we're going to know whether or not the employer is responsible for the $600 a week per employee forever? Sorry.
No, that answer should be known. I just don't know it at the moment. I could certainly look it up. But it just wouldn't be good politics, honestly, for that to go back onto the employer, but who knows?
It certainly, I think from our perspective, it certainly would change the way we do business and who would be laid off and who wouldn't be, because yeah, big time is, I'm sure it's very understandable. We couldn't afford that kind of a hit as a small organization.
So Angela,
Well,
if I understand this correctly, though, that applies to not-for-profits only.
Mm-mm.
So
no, it's everyone.
Everybody.
would be
The
responsible
self-insured.
for the $600 a week.
Well, we're self-insured, Pat, for unemployment because we can be as a not-for-profit. If we were for a profit entity, I believe we would have to contribute to the fund based on a percentage of.
Yeah, different states can self-fund. So New York nonprofits, you can self-insure, but like in other states, it's variable. So it'll be interesting to see how this gets interpreted.
Right, because I wasn't sure if even the payment of normal unemployment during these times would go back and increase the employer's unemployment insurance rate. It's looking like it will impact the unemployment insurance rate, but maybe there will be an adjustment at some point in the future.
Yeah, true.
Your answers have been real helpful. Is there anyone there that can recommend someone that really might have more detail for unemployment issues as we work through this now, or is it just kind of a wait and it changes every day, so just keep watching?
I think Janine and I will talk about this week and see what we can come up with.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is, though, the day-to-day changes. Honestly, it's been crazy. So it may be a combination of both, but we will definitely see if there's anyone else that would know more that's out there. I just don't think they know what they want to do yet with it. So we're just all, day-to-day living through it. But we'll take that into account for sure if we can find somebody. Next week, we are going to have another accountant on speaking on cash flow management. Maybe she has some experience with that as well, or so she may know someone, but kind of stay tuned because we do change this up as we, hear of things and hear of people that can speak to the topic. So,
And Janine, I would love to put you in contact with a colleague of mine. He works on employment law at a law firm in the Buffalo area, and I know that he's been willing to donate some of his times with issues like this.
Okay, sure. Can you email me that information?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for including us. We appreciate
Yes,
it.
thank you very
Thanks
much.
for being here, everybody. Appreciate
Sorry to
it.
monopolize the question and answer period.
Oh, that's fine.
We actually have a question from Dana. She mentioned that can you bring employees in on PPP to clean, paint, and et cetera?
As long as you are considered an essential business and you're not breaking any of the governor's ordinances, I don't see why not. So as far as the headcount rules, if you had 5 employees prior to February 15th of 2020, you get full forgiveness as long as you still have 5 employees. And there's rules around decreasing employees' pay by 25%, and it gets really specific, but it doesn't have to be the same 5 employees. So if you had 5 different ones, had to let them go, they don't want to come back, they're getting really good unemployment benefits, try to find some other 5, and that would include cleaners. It doesn't have to be the same type of work.
And she's trying to unmute, but she can't, but she said that he only has 1 employee.
Okay, and is the employee still working? Oh, she's a bartender, so probably not. So again, if he hired an employee to clean, that would be the same headcount, 1-for-1 employee for the forgiveness purposes. And if the employee who is just hired is making at least 75% of the wages, including tips that the bartender made, then again, they would qualify for full forgiveness. Can the bartender clean or paint? Again, I would want to be very careful about the ordinances with Governor Cuomo, just making sure that you're adhering to all those rules. But assuming you're not breaking any of those rules, then there's nothing against what an employee can do in order to get paid under this program.
I would think if it's a person that normally works in a hotel as a bartender and now they can go to the hotel because it's essential business and they clean, it would probably
Right.
qualify.
Except they'll probably make more on unemployment.
Yeah,
That could be the case.
There was a question earlier regarding tips, and I wondered how that ties into all of this. Is anyone still on that asked that?
So I wasn't the one that asked it, but with being a tour guide for several years, a lot of my income was tips. And with unemployment, we were only allowed to collect unemployment on the tips if we were claiming them. So I know that's a big part of it is you have to be putting it on the record that you are claiming those tips. If they're not on the record, then they're not going to count towards your income as a refundable, as towards the unemployment.
Right.
You in detention?
Oh, I'm out of call.
Okay, are there any other questions or? Again, please let us know if you do have some after the call, and if there's something we can address, we'll certainly bring it up the next week. So reach out to us because we'd like to keep, all of these topics relevant and of interest to everyone that's jumping on. So please feel free to reach out.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all for being here.
Thank you. everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Just click on leave meeting.
What were you smiling